So with that, it looks like we've got most of the people who signed up in our audience. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So the agenda for today, we were going to go over a couple different topics specific to reports. We're going to start off by talking about how to order DAFR reports, give you some basic information that's going to help you throughout the rest of the training. We'll also be talking about specific profiles or screens in RStars that relate to ordering reports. So we'll go over the 95 profile, the D64 profile, the 91 profile. We'll talk a little bit about the reporting menu where you can find all the information in RStars. And at the end, we'll go through a conclusion and walk through an example of how you would order a DAFR report. So we have a couple presenters today. My name is Liz Schultz. I'm the SFMS Senior Operations Analyst. We also have Maria Berglund and Scott Wood joining us today. They're SFMS analysts for your agencies. So you'll hear from several of us today. But I'm going to start us off on ordering DAFR reports. So this training is really intended to provide RStars users with a better understanding of the reporting options through RStars. You can also get data in different ways. You could run queries from the data mart if you use OB or another tool. But RStars reports are something that are generated out of the system. And there's a couple steps to go through in ordering them. So this training is really focused on those specific reports. With the DAFR reports, agencies can request standard reports for different accounting periods at various levels of detail. So we actually have quite a few different reports that are available. On our SFMS website, there's the RStars report guide that tells you everything you need to know about reporting. We're going to be covering a lot of that same information in this training today, but that resource is out there. It lists all the different types of DAFR reports you can order and gives you some examples of what those look like. And with each of those reports, there's the ability to do some customization on what information you need, how it's sorted. One thing I definitely want to mention, keep this in mind, we're going to be talking about reporting. We're focusing on using an electronic format for your DAFR reports. We're really trying to move agencies to using that electronic format for those reports. It just makes sure you can access your reports more timely. DAS Publishing and Distribution recently updated their internal procedures for delivering printed reports to agencies, the hard copies. They're trying to move away from that. They are still delivering certain reports like the DAFR 9800 for invoices. But for most reports, we're really encouraging agencies to use that electronic version if you don't already. We're going to be talking about how to do that today. If you've got questions on a specific report your agency is using and how you might want to change formats, reach out to your SFMS analyst and we can help walk you through that. But the main thing to remember is electronic reports are really the ideal for receiving this information. So when we talk about the reports you can order through RStars, there are three different types. There's what are called control reports, requestable reports, and then profile reports. So we're going to go through each one of these different types of reports just to give you a better idea of what I mean when I say each of those terms. So control reports are reports that the system is producing automatically as a result of a certain batch process. So we have control reports that will generate every night after a batch cycle runs. We have certain control reports that will generate after we run a specific system job, if we're doing the general ledger closing, those types of things. So with control reports, you don't have to specifically order them. The system is generating them to kind of give a trail of what happened in the system, give you information on what exactly posted or the results of a job. We do have a numbering sequence for the DAFR reports that kind of gives you a hint of what type of report it is. Control reports are usually in the range of 2000 to 5999. So those are control reports. they do not require a 91 report request profile to be set up. So that's what I mean when I say you don't actually have to order them. The system's going to generate them. That you will have to set up a 95 report distribution profile to say, you know, what format are you going to receive that report in? Is it going to be electronic? And we're going to go over both of those screens later today in the presentation, but that's what the control reports are. The next type of report we're going to be talking about is requestable reports. These ones are scheduled to run after the last cycle of the week. So typically that's on Friday. If we have a holiday at the end of the week, it may be sooner. You know, around Thanksgiving, we have Thursday, Friday off. So the last cycle of the week would be Wednesday. So these reports you can run. These ones you do actually have to order specifically for them to produce. They're going to be in the numbering sequence of DAFR 6000 through DAFR 9999. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of different reports out there. If you look at our report guide, you can see all of those. But if you want to just see what the most common ones are, you know, what are other agencies using? What sort of reports have been found most useful across the state? We do have a link on this slide to the most commonly requested reports. So you can take a look at that and see, you know, each agency may have a different model of how they run DAFR reports. We have some agencies that rely very heavily on them. They're ordering reports weekly. They're ordering them regularly after month-end close. Some agencies use less reports. They might use more data mart queries, and that's completely fine. It's just how do you want to get the information that you need for your agency to monitor transactions and monitor activity. So if you want to look at that link, you can see some of the common ones across the state. If you want to see what other options are available, you can check out our R-Stars report guide. Again, if you have any questions on a specific report, reach out to your SFMS analyst and we can provide some more information or some examples of what those reports look like. For requestable reports, you're going to have to set up both a 91 report profile and there must be an associated 95 profile. So these ones you actually have to specifically order in the system for them to produce. If you don't order them, they won't produce. We won't have a backup copy of them or anything. They have to be specifically ordered. The final type of report that we have is a profile report. These ones need to be requested as well. You have to order them specifically on the 91 profile. And these provide a listing of current R-Stars profiles. So if you wanted to run a report to see all of the PCAs that you have active or all of the agency objects, or, you know, you can do statewide profiles too if you want to see all of the T codes that are available or all of the comp objects. These profile reports can be requested. They're always going to start with a DAFQ, and that indicates that it's a profile report. And we have a listing of what all of those are in our R-Stars report guide. These can be requested any weekday. You don't have to wait till the end of the week like you do with the requestable reports. You can run these any day of the week to get a listing of your specific profiles. So those are the three different types of DAFR reports we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're probably going to focus a little bit more on the requestable reports in our examples because those are the most common that we see agencies having questions on when they're setting up their 91 report profiles. We also have the agency report coordinators. Each agency should have a designated agency report coordinator. That is what SFMS recommends. When we reach out once a year to update our contacts with your agency, we ask, you know, who is the agency report coordinator? And the reason we do that is it's helpful to have one point person in the agency that kind of manages those profiles, can order the reports, kind of understands the differences between the 91 and the 95 screens. If we in SFMS have a question about a report, we're going to look and see who your contact is at your agency as the agency report coordinator to communicate and ask those questions and work with them to resolve any issues. So as the agency report coordinator, It's really understanding how those profiles work and maintaining those profiles. The 91 profile that are in the system are agency maintained. So making sure that those report requests are active and that they have valid frequency dates and periods. Some of the reports, if you're ordering them for a certain fiscal year or a certain appropriation year, you're going to need to have those profiles updated when we hit that new time period so that your reports are showing the correct information for that period. Making sure any of your active report requests are still relevant. Trying to, if there's reports that are generating and nobody's looking at them, can those be inactivated or removed so we're not producing a lot of extra information that's not needed? And then inactivating or deleting any obsolete report requests. We also have some information about who can access reports. So that agency report coordinator, if you're pulling down those reports and you're emailing them out to a lot of different groups or distributing them, a lot of agencies have set up their agency report coordinator to be that point person to manage that process. So before we get into the sections where we really talk about those specific screens and profiles that are used to order DAPR reports, I want to take a moment just to kind of talk about the standard format that you'll see in our STARS reports. So you may have seen reports in the past. You notice they always kind of follow a similar format. If you haven't, I'll go over that information and how you read and find information on those reports. So there's a couple different sections on the reports. We've got some terms here, and I'll go over each of these and what you would find on a typical DAPR report. So the first section we're going to talk about is the control key. Every report is going to have information in the upper left-hand corner about the report request. So for requestable reports, this is going to tie to information that's on the 91 and 95 screens about this report, what report it is, who ordered it, what period it was ordered for. So that can be helpful if you're looking through multiple reports. That'll give you some information on what specific report this is and who ordered it. The next section is the report header. This is going to be standard on all of our different reports. It's going to give you the title of the report. It'll tell you what agency, what specific time period it's covering. It may have information on the percent of the year that has elapsed or the percent of the appropriation year that has elapsed, depending on the type of report. And it'll have the page number. On that very first line, it'll also have some information about the cycle dates. It's got some abbreviations there. I'll talk about those a little bit more, what each of those are as well, but that's more information for you to identify what period is this covering when you're looking at your reports. There will also be page breaks in most of the RSTARS reports. Depending on the type of report, this could be breaking things out by different gap funds or by gap fund type or D23. So in this example, we're showing the DAFR 8920. That's a trial balance report. So it's showing you a trial balance and it's breaking it out by agency and D23 fund. So on this first page, you'll see the first fund, and then you can scroll through if there's a specific fund that you're looking for. So those will always be bordered by those asterisks on the report, just so you can see that header information. There's also going to be column headings. Those are going to vary depending on the type of report. Those will always be after the page group, and they'll repeat on every page just to help you follow along and review the results in the report. We'll have the detail line items that'll show the actual results of your report. So that's really the information you're looking for. You can see there's quite a bit before we actually get to the detail on the specific information that's contained in this report. There will be subtotals. All of the subtotals and total lines will start with an asterisk before them, so you'll have a visual indicator that that's just a subtotal or a total. So depending on the reports, there will be information, but all of our reports have those subtotals and totals, just so be aware of that when you're looking at the data. And going back to some of those terms that I mentioned earlier, we've got some abbreviations on the report. CFY means it's the current fiscal year. CFM is the current fiscal month. We have LCY for the last closed year, last closed fiscal year, and LCM for the last closed fiscal month. So if you see those abbreviations, that's what they stand for. They're just trying to give you more information on what time period is being covered by that specific DAFR report. We also have different dates, the run date and the cycle date. Agencies don't use this information that much, but just so you know what those different dates mean, the run date is our actual system date and the time of the reporting run. So it just kind of gives us a date stamp of when this report was generated by the system. The cycle date is the current cycle date that's maintained on the 97 R-star screen. The 97 R-star screen, if you're at an agency, it's probably not something you really look at. It's just a system management profile that we use to maintain the system and what the system date is and the cycle dates are. So you may see different cycle dates and run dates. If we had the example is if we had a batch cycle that was run on a Friday, but the reports didn't actually run until early Saturday morning, the cycle date would be the 10th, the run date would be the 11th. And we also have a cycle number. Again, it's an internal tracking that we use to differentiate the different batch cycles. So they are numbered. So not really information that's going to be that useful for an agency, but could be useful if you're sending information for your SFMS analyst to kind of research a report, then we can tell what batch cycle it produced in. Just some more information for us to follow up on. So the last section I wanted to talk about this morning, just about ordering DAFR reports and accessing DAFR reports, is you do have to have the appropriate R-star security to be able to do this. Security is managed for reports on the 96B screen. If you're going to be ordering reports, you have to have the ability to make updates to the 91 screen and the 95 screen. If you're going to be accessing electronic reports, you also have to have access to the Web Reports PDF website, and that's the WRP indicator. So we do have agencies that reach out to us sometimes. They're not able to log into the electronic Web Report site. If they're getting a security error, this is the most common reason, is they just haven't been set up with the appropriate security to do so. So looking at the 96B screen, this screen controls the security to add, change, and delete records on different screens, including the 91 and 95 screens. Not all R-Stars user classes have access to view the 96B screen. You may need to contact your agency security officer, your ASO, to take a look at your security and see if something needs to change. The agency security officer can work with SAR system security if you need to be granted access to reports and you don't currently have them. So if we are 96B screen, we've got a screen print of it here. For reports, we're making sure that on the 91 screen, there's a couple different indicators. You can have a 0, you can have a 2. If you have a 91 screen indicator of 0, you can only view the 91 screen. You can't actually save any changes to it. So you need to make sure you have that indicator of 2 to be able to order reports. Same is true for the 95 screen. We've got it highlighted here. You would want that as a 2 as well if you were going to be responsible for ordering reports for your agency. And the example we have here is for user class 25. That's a specific user class to request reports. So if you're only going to be using that user class to request reports, that would be the one for you. We do have other user classes that allow you to order reports. You don't have to have a user class 25, but you do have to make sure your 96B will allow the 91 and 95 screens to order reports. So if you're having problems trying to save a change and you're getting a security error, you're going to need to reach out to your agency security officer and see, check into your access, see if you need to be granted additional access or user classes to be able to do that. The last indicator on this 96B screen is the WRP. We've got it highlighted here in the bottom right. That should be a 0 if you want to be able to access electronic reports. We have seen some users, if they'll just have it blank and they won't be able to log into the electronic reports website. So if you're getting some sort of error, that's something we recommend checking to make sure you can pull down those electronic reports. So any questions? I know I went through some introductory information and introduced some of the screens that Maria and Scott will be going through with you, but Amber, do we have any questions in the chat?
There haven't been any. Nope. We are good, it looks like.
Okay. Well, if you have questions, feel free to put them in there. We will have more question and answer time. But I am going to move it forward and introduce Maria to talk about the 95 screen.
Hi, good morning. We are going to talk about 95 profile. So here's a kind of chart of a big picture of all the steps Les kind of went through. And after this, me and Scott will dive into detail of each sections. So if we start with 95 screen pretty much will identify the where this report needs to go to the system. So it identifies the person or organization is requesting the report, identifies the name, address, phone number, and any delivery instruction need to be clarified. Describe the media, like how we want to receive this report. Identify the printer if specifically this report need to be printed in agency location, and specify the number of the copies if you need 2 or 3 copies of the same report. So here we have the screenshot of 95 screen, how this screen looks like. We have a media type, which will show the output. Device ID, this is used for printer again, or something like RJE types or number of the copies. And here we identify the agency number, requester, request number. If the same requester ordering multiple reports, they need to set up the request number, report ID. That's that number identifies the report, like DAFR, a specific ID. And name and address and city, state, phone number, and all that detail information. So we get to all of that elements. First, we have central printing in media type. So central printing or electronic reports, which we prefer more, are JE, CD, and images. Now let's see what each one are. Central printing was the one, it will print as a paper and it can be ordered in different formatting like portrait or landscape and with different gray bars around the report. Electronic version, we have 2 types. We can set up as a WRP1, which would be landscape version, or WRP2 if you want to get the report as a portrait PDF. So electronic one will produce as a PDF. It has many advantages to have the electronic report. Especially one of the main one, it is research ability. You can search in the report by document number, vendor name, or amount, or other elements. This is very helpful when you have a large report and you need to just find some information in the large report. multiple employees can have access to the same report. You don't need to order multiple copies, just one PDF you have and everybody can have access to it. One or all pages can be printed if you have a large report and you only need couple page, then you don't need to print out all the report. It still give you option to clarify you want landscape or portrait of version. And one important item it needs to be remembered is that these electronic reports will stay 30 days in our website. So that means for 30 days, you have an access to get online to this report. But if you think you would need this report for longer than 30 days, please make sure to save it in your agency or in local network to have an access in the future. And this electronic version can be ordered to all of our reports, either requestable or control reports. Then we have some other media types called RJE, which is route reports to a specified printer. This will use very specific scenarios when the report need to be printed out in the agency in a specific printer. In that case, if that's the necessary to be arranged, please contact Caroline Hancock and identify the followings. Printer net name. This would be 8 characters, for example, ET 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Printer ID, this should be 4 characters. Printer speed, and contact person or phone number who will arrange all the process and will be in charge. And printer speed, it is very important because printers have 3 types. Looks like they divide to 3 groups: low or medium or high. Low ones, the printer prints less than 1,000 lines per minute. Medium ones print between 1,000 to 2,000 lines per minute, and high prints more than 2,000 lines per minute. Then we have a reporting format available as a CD. This is usually used in central by SFMS groups to maintain by central teams as a CD. And final one, it is image. This image format usually used by Department of Human Service. DHS is very large agency, and sometimes for some of the departments or batch agencies, they need to extract and create sub-reports from the reports they're receiving from us. So this gives them ability to kind of recreate other reports from the main reports our stars generates. And pretty much it looks like it grabs as an image and export the needed data. '95 screen is very important to, I want to emphasize, very important to direct the report to the right direction. So if as an agency, you are clear about, we want all our reports come as a one umbrella, and everything we want to come as a electronic report. And all of them would come as a landscape. So we don't need to specify any other items. We are clear, we want all of them in one location and all of them in one format. In that case, we will set up only 195 screen. So we identify our agency number. We can clarify requester as an agency in this scenario like that. And then we don't need to put any request number or report ID. So when we keep these two elements, these two indicators blank, this will create an umbrella to cover all the reports will be requested on 91 screen for agency 107. But if you, let's say we set up this umbrella and we are clear, we want all of our reports come to one location and all of them coming as a WRP1 format, but there is a report A and we are specific about it. We want for some reason to be printed or we want to come to us in a different format. In that case, we can create second 95 screen. In that one, in the second one, we will clarify the request number and report ID. So when we put report ID, specify the report ID, then that specific report will be printed differently or will produce differently. So that will give you an option to request different formats if you need for different reports. And in all of the 95 screen, requester, if requester is identified as a CNTL, that is a control report. Agency cannot maintain that reports. And usually the control reports maintained by SFMS team. So how to set up and have an access to electronic website. So first, as Liz mentioned, please communicate with security system officers and request an access to your RACF ID. And here is our website. And it will come along something like this. So you will use the same RACF ID and your password you used in your RStars login to RStars. And then it will list all the reports for that day for your agency. And if we need to look up the previous days or previous weeks of the reporting, we can just change the dates. But again, please remember, it will not stay here more than 30 days. So for 30 days, you can come to this page and you will see the reports are stored here. But if we need it for more than 30 days, please make sure to save it locally in your system. Any questions?
We do have a question in the chat, Maria. Is user class 25 necessary to request reports?
It is user class 25, and as Liz mentioned, I think we have other user classes can have an access. It just depends to 96B screen setup. So if you need an access to request a report, set up the 91 screen, which is Scott will cover 91 screen. Please communicate with your security officer to check your 96B screen to see if you have an access to 91 or 92 screen and WRP.
Okay, and then we have one more question. What user class permissions are needed to see the electronic reports? Is that the same or different?
So CD is only used by Central, by SFMS team. It is not available for agencies. But electronic in our website, it will save as a PDF. So if you request as a WRP1 or 2, then report will show up on this website. And easily, if you click on any of that blue lines, it will open and allow you to see the report. And it will have print or download option. Is that answer the question?
And Maria and Amber, yeah, I think that does answer the question. And the user class 25 is one of the user classes you can use. We have a lot of agencies that use user class 27 that will allow you to order reports. And most of our user classes, you just need to have one user class that allows WRP equal to 0 to be able to access electronic reports. User class 27 and 25 allow that by default. So as long as your 96B for one of your user classes shows that WRP indicator equal to 0, you'll have access to view the reports on this website. And if you aren't sure what's on your 96B, check with your agency security officer.
I think I saw some question again in last chat. Amber, what was that?
It just meant how can someone see the report? I think that maybe Liz answered that the permission needed to
Okay.
see the electronic reports, and then so the question was how.
Okay, main takeaway is please request your security officer via this email, check your 96B screen. So 96B screen need to be set up for your rack of ID to have an access to our website, to the requesting the report from 91, 95 screen. And mainly user class 25, 27 can have an access. I hope that's cover all the questions. Can 19 or 17? I know 17 cannot probably. We need to look up our system security manual, but I'm not sure about 19 and 17. Liz, do you remember top on your head? But because they are mainly data entry.
Yeah, I just
people.
looked them up, and by default, user class 17 or 19 would not have any access to do that. So if you only have user class 17 and 19, but you want to be able to order reports, I would have your agency security officer request a user class 25 for you in addition to those other user classes. And then with a user class 25, you could do ordering of the reports and view them electronically.
Okay, looks like that covered the question. Okay, pretty much 96B, it is the key to give you a permission to be able to request reports or go to a website and download reports. Okay, so the next we will move to D64 screen. D64 screen is the profile identifies all the requestable reports and is used to identify and edit the options available for 91 and 95 screen. So if you have a question about any of the reports, how they produce, how often they produce, when they produce, D64 screen, it is a good screen to start up with. You can type in your report ID to see all the information about each report. So one of the lines is, I'm going to through some of the indicators on the 64 screen to the most important ones that can give you some insight about each report. So if requestable indicator is 0, that means it is not requestable. That is R-star generates report automatically. If it is 1, that means centrally report may be requested by SFMS. And if it is 2, that means requestable by everybody, by agency. So that means it is requestable. If you need it, you can request that report to be generated. Other indicator we have, it is that print remote. Can the report print to a remote printer? If so, what printer type is required? So if it is low, if it is medium, or it is high. So as you see in this example, it says yes, can be remote print, and printer type need to be medium. Other indicator, it is time frame indicator. You can see PM, CC, CM, or numbers between 1 and 13, PY or CY. So these are indicates the report. It's the from prior months, last month's closed, current months, any specific months, prior year, and if it is blank, if not allowed per the D64, and current year. And if it is a range, it will be in format of the fiscal month / fiscal year and end by what fiscal month and fiscal year. Then we have an indicator that's called as of. So if it is Y, that means the header on the report, you will see something like as of June 2024. But if it is no, then that header indicator indicates as something like report period July 23 to June 24. So as of will identifies that header line for you. Frequency indicator, it is simple like months, days, or year, or if it is weekly, or this report can be generated quarterly, can be generated daily, monthly, or annually. So this will identify how often this report will run. Specifically on year end, I noticed this is very important indicators because year end close, biennium close, sometimes agencies need a specific information or a specific report, and they don't remember exactly when they run, what day they will have that report. So it is a good indicator to back if you need a specific report to clarify when that report will run. And then here we have what level that report will run, what level that will summarize up. It can be an organizational code level, program code level will goes between 1 and 8, and fund level. And in fund level, we will have 0, like no level on the fund, none. I'm not sure why this is off order, but if it is number 1, it is gap fund group. If it is number 2, gap fund type, user fund group. If it is 3, it is gap fund appropriated fund level. And 4, it is D23 fund level. And this is another very important indicator that shows you to what level your report's going to break down to details. And there is more information about these indicators. We'll clarify in 91 screen, 91 profile, which Scott is going to go through all of them. And there is other criteria to, for example, we can filter the report by agency or organizational code, program code, fund, comp object, or agency object. A special select 1 or 2 codes are defined for each report individually, and special select options will be covered in more detail on 91 screen, what they're exactly looking for. D64 set up, but 91 screen, you can request some information. They are very complete each other, these 2 screens. And I didn't go to too much of detail of them since Scott is going to cover that specific indicators on 91 screen. Any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat at this time, Maria. Thank you.
Well, today I'll be introducing the 91 profile, which is also the report or request profile. Before we do anything else, what makes up the 91 profile? Oh, the report request profile can be broken up into 4 general sections: the control key, the time frame information elements, the classification levels, and the data selection options. If this seems confusing to you, don't worry, we'll be discussing all these sections in this presentation. And to be honest, I think Maria did a good job explaining them on the D64 and 95 sections already. First and foremost, we have the control key elements. To go into more detail, we have agency, requester, request number, and report ID. You must have all these elements before you can request a report. These are the 4 elements that appear in the top left-hand corner of your report once it's created. And quite simply, agency is your 3-digit agency number. I think we all know our agency numbers, so not much to explain there. Requester is a 4-character or less ID assigned by the user that must also be on the 95 screen. So make sure you set up those report files before requesting a report. Report ID is the ID of the report you're requesting, pretty self-explanatory. And finally, request number is normally 1 unless multiple versions of the same report are requested. Change any one of these numbers and you change the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your report. As an aside, financial report IDs are DAFR reports, whereas profile reports begin with DAF-Q, and all report IDs must exist on the D64 report control profile. If it does not exist on that report control profile, you cannot recommend it, or you cannot request it, I mean. Moving on to time frame elements, these are divided into appropriation year, fiscal year, period or range, and frequency. So these elements allow you to control which time periods the reports will show up. Very useful when you need a specific time frame for your report. Frequency is a bit different, but will be discussed with frequency control later. I want to get this out of the way. For fiscal year is the most straightforward. You enter a 2-digit year into the report, and the report will only show data for that fiscal year. It is the least nuanced of these elements, so we will not be spending much time covering it. First off, we have appropriation year. It allows you to select a specific appropriation year, and if left blank, will bring back all appropriation years for your report. The option is here to help you filter your data, but it isn't required. You will still need to check the D64 profile for your report or to see if it allows an appropriation year before using this option. If the D64 profile for your report does not allow an appropriation year, you will need to leave it blank on your request. Like we can see the DAFR 8650 example does not allow this field, so you'll need to leave it blank on your 91 request profile. Time frame, period, or range. While these two seem very similar on the surface, they have very different functions. Period uses 2 digits to determine what dates to filter the report. These options include current month, current year, prior month, and much more, as explained by Maria earlier on the 95 slides. And it is very regimented and very, very tightly controlled, whereas range uses a month and year format. Input a start and end date, and the report will be filtered between those 2 months. Range offers a lot more flexibility, so depending on whether you need last month's data or a very specific time frame, like a quarter, a 2-month period, or a 2-year period, and you will need to decide between using the period option or the range option. As always, be sure to check the D64 profile to clarify your options. Not all reports allow a period, and not all reports allow a range. Frequency, in contrast to the other time frame elements, doesn't filter the date of your report. Instead, it determines when and how often the report will produce. If you need a report to produce at the end of a period, for example, weekly or quarterly, or on a specific date, you can type it into the frequency field. Keep in mind, financial reports can only be ordered on Fridays with a full report run in RStars. Be sure to check your production calendars for more information. But other than that, it's pretty simple to use. You can either type in the specific date you want it in a day, month, year, or a month, day, year format, or type in a recurring date, like monthly, weekly, or quarterly. You need to get your reports that way. And as always, again, check the E64 screen. And not all these options are allowed based on which report you choose. Moving on to frequency control on the 91 screen, if you set a frequency control of S, the 97 profile will control what frequencies the report runs at. This profile has the system data that determines the current month, current year, prior year, and last closed month for reporting purposes statewide. If you ever had questions on how the report knows which month is the current month, this profile is why for system-wide reports. It is maintained by SFMS, so no, you cannot edit any of the information here. However, if you set frequency control to A, this has some of the same indicators as the 97 profile. However, it is controlled by your agency. So, a lot of what I just said applies. However, it's something that your agency can use if you want on indicators that are not normally found on the report. So, very similar. Moving on to classification levels. We have 5 classification levels in Oregon: organization, program, object, fund, and general ledger account. Now, Kubo Fund is not used in Oregon, but it is still in the RStar system. So that's the reason why it's on here, just to explain we will not be covering that today. Okay. Also, before we move on, each of these levels is determined by a 1-digit indicator. If you put a 0 in the indicator, the classification level will not be applied. But first, what do these actually do? Classification levels determine the level the report will be summarized. It means you can have it look at the big picture or separate everything into tiny little details. It's still important to check the D64 screen to see what options are available for your reports. Overall, classification levels help to make your report or information more specific to your needs. It won't cut out any information, but it will separate information by iFund or GL account so that it's easier for you to look at what you need. Classification level organization. And from the DO3 profile, we use that to identify the level of organization detail for your reports. This is especially helpful for agencies that are part of an agency group. You can structure the report to show information by agency group or by the individual agency levels so that they can show that you can have a big picture or view of everything or just your specific agency. You will not be able to use this to peek at other agencies' information, but if your agency is part of a group, you can use this to separate the two agencies or show them as one group together. Moving on to program level, this pulls from the DO4 profile and allows your reports to be summarized to the level of your program structure. Now, every agency is different regarding how stratified their program structures are. However, this field will make things a bit more manageable. Well, and if you have program levels down to 5 or 6, this can be very helpful in determining the ins and outs of those really small levels. Object is a bit more nuanced. While each of the indicators it's a bit more nuanced because as each of the indicators has a different descriptive profile, determining where it's pulling from. It's simple to understand because we go from gap category to gap /grant object to controller object to agency object group. But we start out with the D16, the D08, the D10, then the D11, and then the D25. If there's a specific object that you're not seeing on this report, then it will lead to 5 different descriptive profiles that you will need to double check before or figuring out where things might have gone wrong. As always, if you have questions, please refer back to your PowerPoint slides. It's for further clarification. And fund, as we all know, relates to different fund categories for this classification level. Well, what makes this incredibly difficult is not only do we have different descriptive profiles for each of these indicators. There's for indicator 2 and 3 on fund. And indicator 2 refers to gap fund type and state fund group. So depending on which one you use, you might need to look at the D21 or the D39. And for the indicator, for indicator 3, you might need to look at D24 or D22 for the gap fund and appropriate fund, especially. But just know that this is an option if you want to classify your report by a gap fund or gap fund type instead of having to stick with D23 funds. And as for general ledger or account, you also have the option to classify this report by, again, general ledger accounts. So we go from GL account category to GL account class, as controller GL, and then finally agency GL. Well, while this information is pulled from 4 descriptive profiles, I feel like it's a bit easier because as they're kind of sequentially numbered. We go from D13 to D14 to D31 to D32. I would always advise double checking in the reports guide and the PowerPoint, or if you need help, but I do appreciate how this is sequentially numbered, so it's a bit easier to remember. Or still, for GL accounts, to answer the question, we will explain frequency control all again and during the question section. And so sorry about that. But yes, for classification level general ledger account, this will give you the little details you need to separate everything into the general ledger accounts you want. Now, 91 Pro. Now for special selects, you may notice that a lot of the categories are similar to what we just discussed. Agency and agency group, organization code and program code, appropriate fund and fund, comptroller, agency object, and GL account, agency and agency GL account. Special selects 1 and 2 are a lot more nuanced, so they will be the bulk of this discussion. But we have to ask why are these similar to what we just went over for classification levels? Because special selects are limits on what type of information should be included in the report. If classification levels will subdivide the report, this filters out information from your report. So, if you put an agency into special select, it will filter out the report agencies that were not included in the special select. For example, for Dapper 8650, it allows agency group, agency, and fund special select. So, you can filter it by agency and by fund to get the specific combination that you need. This is for if you're just like, I don't want all this detail, I need to pull back. This section is how you do it. So this is going to be a bit of redundant information, but bear with me. Need data selection for agency and agency group. If you want to select an agency, use your 3-character agency code. It must exist on the DO2 profile. For agency group, use the 2-character code from the D12 profile, or leave it blank if an agency is entered. For organization, and enter a 4-character organization code, or leave blank. The code must be on the DO3 profile. For program code, enter a 4-character program code, or leave it blank. It must be on the DO4. For appropriate fund, enter a 4-character appropriate fund, or leave blank. It must be on the D22. For fund, on which we refer to it as D23 fund, so we know which profile it goes to. Enter the 4-character fund, or leave blank. Comptroller object. You can leave this one blank, but it must exist on the D10 profile if you are planning on using it. Agency object is a 4-character object that you can leave blank, but it must exist on the D11 profile. For GL account, enter the 4-character GL account, or leave blank. It must be on the D31 profile. Agency GL account, enter a 4-character general ledger or agency account, or leave blank. It must be on the D32 profile. And now that all of that is out of the way, here's where we get to the nuanced part of the discussion. And special selects 1 and 2 are up to 10-digit codes that are specific to the report that you're trying to produce. As such, you will need to look in either the RSTARS report guide or the 90 profile and find the specific report you need before filling in these fields. To illustrate this, let's take a look at the DAPR 8650 on the next slide. As we can see, the 91 screen with DAPR 8650, a special select 1 is required and special select 2 is not used. For this DAPR, you will need to enter G for GAP or N for Nakubo under special select 1 to request this report. Since Nakubo is not used in Oregon, you would need to enter G in this instance. And it's basically the special select 1 is just determining whether you pull from GAP fund or Nakubo fund, but this really is the most nuanced part of special selects. Whatever else you get from special selects, it was pulled over from classification levels. This is always specific to your reports being requested, so make sure you check the E64 profile before or filling in any of your special select options. Any questions? I know that was a lot to cover, and I'm running my mouth. I understand there was a question about frequency control. Amber, if you could read off the question.
Perfect. I saw you were going to it, so I was waiting until you got there. But will you please explain frequency control again? How do you use frequency control and what are the options?
Well, the two options for frequency control are S and A. Hey, basically, using S uses the system-wide I-97 profile. Well, these are all the reporting indicators that are common throughout the state of Oregon. And if you use frequency control of S, then it standardizes the reports for the entire state of Oregon. And this is why we recommend it, just so that it's something that's easy to compare between your reports and other agencies' reports. However, if the reporting indicators are not what you need on the 97 profile, your agency also has a 25 profile with reporting indicators set up that you can use. These indicators control what frequencies your reports run at. So, if you see week, month, quarter, or year here with ends on them, that means they will not run during the week, month, quarter, or year here. So it is very important to figure out what frequency you need for these reports and what the statewide system versus what your agency allows. Do we have any other questions, Amber?
I do not see any other questions. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Well, I believe it's time to move on to the reporting menu. This will be a much more relaxed, much more relaxed topic to close out everything. And so how do we find the reporting menu? Quite simply, you start from the RStars main menu, press F7 to get to the reporting menu, and then press F5 from the reporting inquiry menu to get to the main reporting menu. Pretty simple. F7 from the main menu to get to the reporting/inquiry menu, and F5 to get to the reporting menu from there. So, what is the reporting menu? You will find 4 screens devoted to generation of DAFers. The D63 and D64 screens are created and maintained by SFMS and contain the definitions the system uses in report generation and delivery. Agencies complete the 91 and 95 profiles in order to order reports and instruct the system where to distribute them. Pretty simple stuff. Basically, this is a list of all the profiles that we just got done talking about. For the D63 device profile, now it is used to define the 4 character codes for specific remote printers. To print a report to a D63 printer, use the printer ID as the device ID in a report 95 report distribution profile screen. And we highly encourage agencies to consider the convenience of electronic reporting. This is an option, but we strongly encourage electronic reporting. To establish a remote printer, you will need the following: agency number, printer net name, printer ID number, printer speed, and the agency contact name and telephone number. Or once you send it to Carlene Hancock, SFMS will send the request to Software Application and Maintenance Services, who works with the agency to test the printer. SFMS then creates a D63 profile for the printer. One word of caution, and you have been hearing this all throughout the presentation, but we strongly encourage you to set up electronic reports. And then if you want to set up a remote printer, set that up as a backup. IT has to set up a printer at the agency location to be able to receive DAFR reports. This process requires a work request to complete the setup, and it'll take some time. Our electronic reports are instantaneous. You can download them from the SFMS website, and we are working on alternative ways to get the reports to you, which will be discussed at a later date. However, we highly encourage electronic reports. Remote printers are still an option. They will always be an option, but they shouldn't be our main option going forward anymore. I know that was pretty short, but do we have any questions in the chat?
I don't see any. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Hammer. Take it away, Liz.
Great, thank you, Scott. All right, so we did go through a lot of information here. Probably the takeaway is ordering reports from RStars. There's a lot of useful information, but there's a lot of steps to follow in really understanding those indicators. So we hope these slides are going to be useful for you. But to kind of reinforce this, we want to walk through an example just to kind of show what all of this information looks like in practice if you were actually trying to order a specific report. So let's take a look. We've got an example here. This is a bit older example, so I'm going to ask you to travel back in time with me. We're going to imagine we're just before the close of the month in January 2023. All the information is still relevant. It's just that I want to point out that difference in time period. So in this example, Agency 107 DAS wants to request the agency operating statement report, the DAFR 6610. They're going to want the report for the month that is closing, January 2023, but they're also going to want this report to produce every single month going forward. They want this to be a monthly report that they can review each month. The agency is going to use the 97 system management profile to control their report generation. That's that frequency control. It's going to be set to S in our example, and that is really our recommendation. If you're ordering reports, it just makes things easier to use that S frequency control. That way you don't have to make sure you've set everything correctly up on your 25 profile. It'll just use the system management profile. The agency for this operating statement report, they want to be able to see it broken down to the agency object level and by D23 fund. So as we mentioned, when you're ordering reports, there's different options of what level of information you have. So in this example, they're going to want to do the lowest level of information on this report. The agency is going to follow the best practice of using their requester ID of DAS for their requestable reports on the 95 screen. So we'll show an example of that. They're going to use a default 95 profile so that this report will produce electronically. And as mentioned, the desired distribution is that electronic website. So in order for the agency to order this report, the first thing that they're going to do, they're going to look up this profile, this report on the D64 profile. So the D64 is just a good reference information to tell you a lot about the report. You can also go to the report guide and get the same information. But looking at the D64 for the DAFR 6610 report, we can see at the top the requestable indicator is 2, which means yes, the agency can order this one. If you're looking at a report and it says it's not requestable or centrally requestable, and you have questions on that, reach out to your SFMS analyst. But for this one, we can see it's requestable, so we can order it in our agency on the 91 screen. So first we need to make sure we have a 95 profile. This is going to tell us where the report is going to produce. We have an example here of the best practice of creating a default 95 profile, so all of your reports would produce electronically. So if you already had this set up, you don't have to set up another one. But in this example, this is the 95 profile we're going to use. The agency is going to be 107. We're going to have that standard requester of DAS just to kind of have that default. This is a DAS requested report. We're going to leave request number and report ID blank because this is a default 95 profile. Any request number, any report will use this 95 profile for this agency and this requester. And to make sure that we have this electronic, we're going to use the distribution code WRP1. And we're also going to have the media type be WRP1. This means it's going to be a landscape format. WRP2 would be a portrait format, but the majority of our reports produce in landscape format. So WRP1 is going to be the most common distribution code and media type that you'll see. We're going to leave device ID blank. We only need one copy. It's electronic. We can save off as many copies as we want, so we only need to order one. And it does require we fill in the name and the address. We're not actually having this report printed and mailed, but just putting in some information on who's requesting it so you can see this profile. So this is an example of the 95 profile that we're going to be using for this request, and that'll make sure that we get the report in an electronic format. So now we need to go to the 91 profile to request the specific report. So when we're completing our 91 profile, we need to use the same agency and requester that was on our 95 profile. That's how the system's tying these together and saying this 91 request is going to look at this 95 profile to show that it should be an electronic version of the report. We're going to put just a request number of 01, and we're going to put our report ID of DAFR 6610 because that's the report we want to order. Now for the request number field, most of the time, if you're ordering the report, you can just do a request number 01. In this example, DAS is wanting to have it broken down, the staffer 6610 to the agency object in the D23 level, but maybe they want another 6610 to produce that's at a higher level. It's summarizing it by comp object or by gap fund. You could create a request number 02 and then set different filters on it. So that's usually when we see different request numbers. If you're requesting the same report, you just have different filters that you want to use on a specific request. So we've got the top part of our 91 profile completed. Now we need to figure out what we need to do for some of these other indicators on here. So there's some information. As you notice, a lot of the indicators, they don't really tell you a whole lot of information. On the D64 screen for the different level options, it'll tell you low or high. For org codes, what you can select. For objects, you can select a level 1 through 5. Fund, you can do level 1 through 4 on the D64 screen. That doesn't mean a whole lot until you go to the report guide and understand what those indicators are. So when we're choosing our different level options for this report, we can say we want to have it at the level 2. We have to have it at level 2 for agency. For the object, we're going to select the lowest level, which is level 5, or excuse me, we're going to do at level 4. We're going to do agency object for the D11. If you had an agency object group on the D25, you could have it at an even lower summary level point. For fund, we want to do level 4 for the D23 fund. So on our 91 screen, we've got our 107 DAS. We've put the period as current close. We are currently wanting to order the report for January. January is going to be closing in our example here. If you see the top right, we've got a date of January 12th, 2023. So we want to order the report for the current closed period. We put our frequency as monthly, and we put our frequency control as S. So this will make sure every time a fiscal month closes, we are going to have this report produced. So once we close out January, you'd be able to go access the electronic report and see the results of that information the following Monday when you come in. And this will make sure we can just continue to use this same report. We don't have to update the fiscal year period, the from date or to date. We can just have this always generate a monthly report. For our level indicators, we're going to put in those that information on org level 2. We want object level 4 for the agency object, and we want a fund level of 4 for the D23. There are also the option to enter special selects. So special select fields are going to be entirely dependent on the specific report that you are ordering. You can look at the D64 screen and see what special select options are available. O means it's optional. You can enter something in there, or you can just leave it blank. N means you're not allowed to set any filter for that. We also have fields special select 1 and special select 2. In this example, it shows that they're optional. So if we want to get more information about what additional special selects we can do, you can go to the 90 news screen, the help screen in RStars, and type in the actual report, the DAFR 6610 as the keyword, and it'll give you some more information about the report and what the special selects are. You can find the same information in the report guide. There's multiple ways to get to that answer. But for these special selects, we can choose if we want the data summary or detail. So we can enter an S or a D. Summary will just give us the totals. Details will give us a lot more information for the funds. We can also indicate whether we want to just pull specific gap fund types. Do we only want to see governmental funds? Do we only want to see proprietary funds? We can even use those special select sections to enter specific D23 funds. You can do up to 8 per request if you only want to look at specific D23s on that 6610. Now, these are all optional, so you can just leave those blank and it'll produce everything for your agency. It'll show both the proprietary and the governmental. It'll show all the funds. So those are options if you want to filter down your information further. So if we go back to our 91 screen, in this example, we've left most of those special select indicators blank. Just as an example, we're showing if you have an agency that's part of an agency group, if you're able to enter accounting information for more than one agency, you could use your special select to identify which agency you want to run the report for. Most of the time, it's going to be the same agency as the request. You know, if it's DAS, it's going to be 107, and the agency would also be 107 because you're getting 107 data. But if, you know, DAS does the accounting for another agency, they could put that other agency in there and run reports for that. Now, you have to have the security to be able to do it. You can't put any agency in there and run another reports for another agency. But that's how you would differentiate if you've got an agency group and you're handling accounting for multiple agencies, which agency you want the report to generate for. So, you know, the special selects, we could add more filters, but in this example, we just want everything on the 6610. So we are not putting any special selects in there. We're making sure the status is active and we're saving that profile. So that would be an example of how you would order a report. Again, it's going to be a little bit different for each type of report. So I would really encourage, if you haven't done it already, to take a look and see what sort of 95 profiles and 91 profiles your agency has set up. Like I said, some agencies rely more heavily on DAFR reports than others. So you can kind of take a look and familiarize yourself with what you have. If you're wanting to make changes to those or you're wanting to add new requests, take a look at these slides, take a look at our report guide, and feel free to reach out if you've got questions on things on how to set them up. One thing, if you have used DAFR reports before, or if you haven't, just kind of a word of caution. If you don't set up that profile correctly to order the report, the 91 screen, it's not always going to give you an error. What'll happen is the report just won't produce. So it's really important to make sure you've set up that profile correctly so that when you go and log in to look at your electronic report, you can find it there. If you're seeing you were expecting a report and it didn't generate and you're not seeing it there after the batch cycle has run, take a look at how your profiles were set up. There may have been something that was set up incorrectly that prevented the report from generating. And again, if you need help, please feel free to reach out because it's not always intuitive. There's a lot of different indicators on these different screens. So if you need help, feel free to reach out and we can kind of walk you through that. So are there any questions that we have on any of the topics we've gone over so far? Amber, do you see anything?
There is not any questions currently in the chat. Nope.
Okay. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to move forward to a couple of our wrap-up slides, but we're still available to answer questions. Again, just contact your SFMS analyst if you do have questions related to R-STARS reports. We're going to be putting this recording in the slides on our website, so you'll be able to review them later. You can share them with others in your agency that may need this information. Keep on the lookout for future trainings. We have our next SFMS training in November with the November user group on the 5th. So please attend that. We're not going to be covering reports specifically, but we're going to be covering a lot of different topics related to using R-STARS.